on. We will be right back.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Shout out to people watching on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, Periscope, and Twitch. If you have a question or comment for Linda and Caitlin, make sure you write it below and we'll try to squeak it in while they're talking. Thanks, guys, for joining. It was a bit last minute getting on with Skype. Skype is always a bit tricky. So you guys are in Iwakuni right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How's the weather today? It's beautiful, right?
It is a beautiful day.
Yeah, it was kind of chilly this morning, so I dressed really warm, and then it got hot.
Yeah.
So it's like that weird time of year where it's hard to tell what's going on with the temperature.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I had too many layers on and then was like peeling them off during the day. But during the day when it felt really hot and I looked at the temperature and it said 24 degrees. And I was like, oh, okay, so 24 feels hot now. A few weeks ago, 24 was cold, right?
In the summer.
So, Caitlin, it's the first time I've met you. It's nice to connect with you.
It's so nice to connect with you. Thank you for organizing this.
No, you're welcome. And you and Linda are doing some really exciting projects around with pottery and different things. Before we dive into that stuff, would you guys just introduce yourselves a little bit?
Sure. I'm Linda. I grew up in Iwakuni, and I run the IwakuniFoodie page here. And I write about travel and food in the local area, but I also do travel outside of Iwakuni and write about food places outside of Iwakuni when I'm traveling. And that's about it.
Yeah, you had some beautiful photos. I'm showing your homepage link right now. You had some beautiful photos from Oita or Yufui not long ago and different areas. So not just Yamaguchi, but not Tokyo. And that is the theme of today's talk, not Tokyo.
That's right. Yeah.
Caitlin, how about you?
So lately, because of COVID, I've been focusing a lot more on the Inaka and countryside and more of the experiences that I have as a foreigner living not in Tokyo or not in a big city. So I mostly share experiences, my day-to-day life, my interests, and try to showcase the beauty of the countryside as much as I can.
Yeah, awesome. I really enjoy going through both of you guys' Instagram and your website and everything. But Caitlin, you're also doing so many videos on YouTube, right?
Yes, that's my newfound love and passion, my little passion project.
That's awesome. I really enjoyed your sustainability swap video.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you tell us about that one a little bit?
Yeah, so I've been partnering with a brand called Mightiness, and they focus on sustainable swaps in your home that are really easy. And one of the reasons that I was drawn to that is because the recycling system where we live is very intense. We separate it into 9 categories, and that was something that I had never experienced before. And I really love it, but being so involved, and it's a very personal experience to touch all of your trash and wash all of it and separate it. It occurred to me how much waste I was producing. And then also, Japan itself does have its own way of doing things, and there's a lot of plastic. So I just wanted to find ways to reduce my own waste to make a difference without also harming my trips to 7-Eleven. And I just felt like in the home is really where I could focus. I could focus and not take away my experiences being in Japan. So that's kind of where that came from. And I feel like it makes it more approachable too. It just shows people that you can try to find ways without being overly consumed in it or intimidated because it's a big change, and Japan does make it challenging sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think the main point is just to try,
Yeah.
and like you said in the video, if it's not too hard and you can switch it out, then switch it out and try it. I loved how you did like a garbage audit, right? And you were looking at what you were wasting so much, and it was paper towels. You want to tell us your hint, or should we send people to watch the video?
Well, if they're really interested in like a deep dive into it, you can totally watch the video. I do share. It's such an interesting topic, though. Like people are just so interested in trash, and it was just nothing I thought. I didn't, because Linda and I joke. But she'll be like, people really like your page. I was like, no, people love my trash and they love my home. They like my house in Japan and they like the trash system here. Um, but yeah, growing up in America, we use paper towels like it's like nothing. And, I can't be blamed for the way that I'm brought up, but I can make my own decisions as an adult. So making decisions like that, is just like better. I feel better about it, and it saves you money. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a woman in the beginning of the series when we started, Melissa, and she started making her own eco wraps, the reusable wraps for food, because she did a similar thing to you. She looked at how much waste her family was using, and a lot of it was plastic wrap. And so she researched how to make it for herself. Now she sells it, Eco Hachi wrap. Yeah. And then the company you introduced, they don't ship to Japan, but if you're in the US, Canada, or Australia, you can get it, right?
Yes. And then I always tell my audience, because so my mother-in-law is wonderful. She forwards a lot of stuff to me that I can't get from companies, and that's one of them. But I always tell people, like, just because you can't get that company doesn't mean you can't watch these videos and get inspired to find local people and local businesses to support yourself.
Yeah.
It's all supposed to be just inspirational and just trying to move forward in a non-pressured way. Like it's actually really exciting. It's like a challenge in my house now.
Absolutely. And we talked to Alex St. Jean, who started a company in Japan called myecolife.jp. And he sells a lot of the similar things, like reusable wash brushes instead of soaps, sponges and stuff, and hard bristles, and razors, like the old style razors, which is a little bit scary looking, but if you get used to it, it seems like higher quality, right? Switching out these things anyway. And
Yes.
then you said you were a bit freaked out by the 9 categories of trash. I
That
have
was interesting.
I have visited the recycling center in San Francisco, Recology, and Kamikatsu in Japan. They both separate into more than 40 kinds of trash.
Honestly,
So that makes 9 feel pretty easy.
I would actually take on the challenge because I'm actually really into organizing right now, so it'd be fine. I would just color code and label.
No, that's a lot of trash cans.
It's a lot, yeah. When
Tiny little
little pails or something. I mean, how
Yeah.
would you do 40 something?
No, it's a big trash sorting area. But one of the big fixes for them to get up to 80% diversion from landfill, like most of Japan, most of the world, is maybe 30% diversion from landfill by recycling. So Kamikatsu and San Francisco are at 80%. So, but one of the big reasons is composting. And I noticed in another of your videos, you were introducing your house, your beautiful house. And in your sink, you have like a strainer for food waste. So if you were to take your food waste and put it into compost, that's a really easy system instead of garbage disposal, right?
I've been interested in that, but that's one of my next steps. We're taking
Baby steps. No,
I've heard
baby
it's really
steps are
challenging,
good.
and I don't have a garden, so I'd have to maybe find a neighbor to like give them.
Yeah. I know. And then I met somebody recently, and they live in an apartment. They don't have room for a compost or a garden, and they're freezing all of their compost. And then they give it to a local farm when they go and visit the farm.
Oh,
and
that's
so it
smart.
doesn't smell. But I don't have freezer space for that. I mean, it's really, you have to do what works for you, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a commitment. Like
Yeah.
you have to be invested. Like composting is like having a baby.
Or if you have a garden, it's not like having a baby. You just put
Yeah.
it in the garden.
Yes. For those of you that have a garden.
Yes, yes.
So, Linda, let's talk about some of the projects you guys have been working on together. So, how did you get started kind of doing this? How did
Um,
this begin?
so Caitlin approached me and told me about this project she wanted to do to introduce different people in Japan, kind of like their story, tell their story. Maybe find some people that do some interesting trades or crafts, and crafts that are maybe dying out in Japan, or farmers too. Certain farmers like rice farmers and lotus root farmers, they're starting to get older, and a lot of the younger generation, they don't want to take over. And so when she approached me, I got really excited because it was something that I had thought about before too, but I don't have time. So
And it's hard on your own, I
yes,
think.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So when she asked me, I was so excited and more than happy to help out in any way that I can. And she does all the hard work. I translate and I make the arrangements and set up the meetings with whoever we're going to do a video on. But then Caitlin does all the interviewing and the editing and all the hard stuff. So
I enjoy it.
It looks like a fantastic collaboration. And Linda, because you've been in that area for so long and you have so many great connections and you have the language as well. And then Caitlin, because you have the young energy and all the YouTube knowledge. You guys are such a great combination. I love it.
Yeah,
Looking
I
forward
think
to seeing more.
it's definitely played to both of our strengths. And whatever one of us has a weakness in, I think the other one carries. So, and we're both really passionate. Like, we're just both so interested in people and just, I think selfishly it started because we wanted to go talk to people and like learn about them. And then we were like, well, we should like put it on you. Like, it'd be really cool to share that with people on YouTube.
Yes.
And then, especially because so many people missed out on traveling here. And then to also highlight experiences and things that a lot of people don't get out of Japan because the big cities and like the big three, they're just highlighted over and over again, but Japan is so special and has so much more to offer. And yeah,
I think it's a completely different experience when you actually live here than when you come here as a tourist. There's so many things that tourists just don't see or don't have an opportunity to see or experience. And some of these people that we talk to have such interesting stories, and we learn something every time we talk to somebody. We just learn something new about, whether it be about pottery or about lotus root farming or anything. And so it's super interesting, at least for me. Like, I just enjoy learning something new about something that I've known about all my life, like lotus root. I grew up here. So, and Iwakuni is known for their lotus. I love lotus root. But when we met with the farmer, I learned some things that I had no idea about. And so it was super, super interesting. And I think it's going to be really cool to share that with the world and let people see what it's like. And so many people out there have never even heard of lotus root, don't even know what it is, don't realize it's food.
and it's a big part of the culture. And I don't know, what I've learned from the interviews that we've done is like a lot of things always tell a story.
Yeah.
So even though the workers or the people who have the trade, there's always some like long story about how they got into it and why they stay doing it. And a lot of the reasons aren't always what I thought, because probably like my ignorance or I'm naive. Like, I just assume people did it because their parents did it for so long and they're invested in it, but that's not always the case. And I was like, wow, it's just very eye-opening because you only hear, I feel like, one side of the story a lot of the times. And again, we're only showcasing like one person in that industry, so it's very specific to them. But it's just so interesting. I can't wait to like get the series going more, but yeah, we're enjoying it a lot.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Can you tell us about lotus root? I have one picture from Linda's Instagram. It looks like wood. Like, I would never imagine.
It does. Or it kind of looks like a loofah to me sometimes.
It does.
I can describe like the texture, and then you can tell more of the story. So to me, if you've ever had like a potato, and if you've ever had a water chestnut, to me, and I apologize, that's my dog. He's really excited Linda's here, and he's trying to break in. Lotus root reminds me like if a potato and a water chestnut had a baby. That's what lotus root reminds me of.
Is it really heavy, like these sticks of lotus root?
They're not so heavy, but it
They
was
have the holes in them.
yeah, but it was surprising. I mean, I won't give it all away because I think, it'll be in the video, but it was very, very surprising to me to learn how they actually grow in the
Yes.
ground. It wasn't the way I thought that they grew in the ground.
Now, this is going to be a very ignorant question, but they don't grow below lotus flowers, do they?
So they grow in
the pond?
mud.
Okay.
Yep,
but the actual like leaves, those do grow out of the lotus.
The lotus.
So the lotus is actually the root of the stem.
Right. Which was also surprising because I had no idea.
I thought that the leaves grew, and then there were like roots, and then there was like the lotus. That's not what
I cannot wait for this video because I've been intrigued by lotus for forever. I've eaten it. I love the flowers. I love it looks like lotus lily pads that you see sometimes, right? We have a comment from Paul. As a vegetarian, I have been enjoying lotus root in teppanyaki places as a filling meat substitute. The lotus root bloom is coming. The lotus root boom is coming. I hope so.
December is like their biggest crop or harvesting time. It's their busiest time is December. So, yeah.
Wow.
Lotus root season.
Yeah, and I'll never look at lotus root again anymore because
it's like the same.
I'll never look at it again. I'll never look at it the same anymore. After that experience, you just have a different attachment. It's just like anything, right? Like you have an interest in something, but once you learn the story of it or experience it differently, you just have such a better appreciation for it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you said the same thing about pottery, that after doing the pottery, you became really interested in buying pottery, learning more about pottery. So tell us about your pottery class that you guys are doing or did.
So I've been going to this pottery class for about 6 years now. And I had absolutely zero experience working with clay. So when I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. And now I've learned so much, but I've always loved pottery, but it definitely has given me more of an appreciation for what goes into making even just one little rice bowl. So much work goes into it. And so much of the person's personality too, I think. When you look at pottery from different artists, you can see the difference and how some of them are very playful with the way that they paint it or the way they decorate it. And some are very simple and very chic looking. And so now when I go pottery shopping, I don't really think about the price so much anymore. If I really like the piece and I want it, I usually will just go ahead and pick it up because I know somebody spent a lot of time making that piece of pottery. And maybe it took them multiple times actually to get it to look just like that. So, because I've had pieces that I've spent a lot of time on, and then when I got it back, it was cracked, and that was very frustrating and sad for me because I spent 4 classes making this beautiful piece of pottery that I thought was going to be so fantastic. And then I got it back and it had a crack in it and I couldn't use it. And so when I think about that and I realize it's just not a perfect thing that you can really control all the time. So I always think about how many times that person has probably had something come out not quite the way that they wanted it to, and the amount of time they spend on each piece. So yeah definitely a bigger appreciation for the pottery.
Yeah, beautiful. We're going to go back to pottery in a second, but Johnny Two Socks on Twitch, thanks for your comment. He says, how do you cook lotus root? How do you cook it?
I have never cooked it. I still have it downstairs. But there's different like meals you can serve it in. Like my favorite way to eat it is tempura. Like when it's fried, it's so delicious. Yes. but you can cook it in like stews or it's like a hearty vegetable.
It is.
So you can use it in a lot of things.
Yeah,
But-
stir fries. I put it in my curry actually. In the
Right.
winter when it's in season, I will add lotus root to my curry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question, Johnny. But it's like you said, isn't it? It's kind of like a water chestnut type, like a lighter vegetable, right? It's not super heavy. I really like the texture.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
more
too.
about the texture than the flavor.
Right. It
Because
doesn't
the flavor,
have a whole lot of
yeah,
flavor.
it'll take on the flavor of any, like if you put a sauce on it, that's what it'll taste like. So it's
Right.
more about like this like
that
crispy,
yes,
like
yes.
bite. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm showing the picture of your beautiful new teapot that you just got, Linda.
Oh, from a pottery shop where I take classes.
Maybe it's you, the white one. It looks like just a beautiful glaze on it. Gorgeous. And
got that.
then, yeah,
The shop where I do the classes.
wonderful. And then your teacher, you played a little trick on him, didn't you, Caitlin? You gave him a special drink?
Which
She's
I
always a trick on
You
me.
gave him a special drink? How did he like that?
yeah. So for those of you that are watching, gift giving is a really big part of culture in Japan. So anytime we go and we meet with these local craftsmen or farmers or my pottery sensei, like I will always take them food and treats and snacks like omiyage. And my mother-in-law helps send stuff to me. Like she sent me a big thing of Trader Joe's because that's a novelty here. So anyway, what you're bringing up is when I gave him root beer for the first time. That was a treat. Yeah, he thought it tasted like medicine, rightfully so. Like kind of like a minty dark soda is, I guess, what it tastes like. But yeah, he's a character. He's wonderful.
That's
He's a
great.
bit sport about things.
Yeah. I remember when I gave root beer to my British husband for the first time, and same kind of response. This tastes like something from the dentist. Why would you drink this?
Yeah, and he said that it tasted like what's the cooling stuff?
Oh, saronpasu. Like the heating pads
Yeah.
you put when you have a sore shoulder or a sore back. He said it tasted
Oh.
like that. And then
But
it
he kept
reminded
drinking
him
it.
of medicine. Yeah.
I was like, "Is it good?" And he was like, "Mm-hmm." But I was like, "It's okay if you don't like it. That's kind of why I brought it."
Yeah.
But yeah, so anytime we go meet with people, I try to take them like American omiyage things for them to try because it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's really fun. Molly says pottery making is quite rewarding, but clays seem to have their own personalities many times. Did you find that?
True.
That's very, very
Yes.
true. Because you can make something with one clay and then pick up a different clay, and the texture, the feel is so different. And then even if you're working on a piece, and sometimes you have to let things not like sit, but like you're working on something, but you can't like add a handle until the next class. And then even when you go back, the texture could be different.
Yeah.
So you have to like feel it. I don't know.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah, that's true.
So it looks like, were you using a wheel or were you just doing it by hand? Linda, I'm showing your pottery now and it looks like your fingerprints all around. It's a beautiful big bowl that you've made.
Just did. So we do have wheels, but they're manual. They're not the fast wheels you normally see when you're watching pottery and people are, in 3 seconds producing a vase or we have manual wheels that we use and we really only use them when we're shaping our pottery. So we do a lot of coil. We just make coil and then we stack them on top of each other and then
until it builds a thing.
Until it gets as high as we want and then we shape our bowl from there if we're making a bowl. So we have different ways that we do things, but we don't work on the wheel that a lot of people think of when they think of pottery.
Yeah, it takes a lot longer.
Yes.
And usually if I'm shopping for pottery, I'm like, how many classes would it take me to make this?
Right? It really makes you appreciate it more, doesn't it? For sure. Yeah, let's talk about your pottery buying because you went on a little pottery shop buying, and when you were making bread together, you were also talking about her pottery collection, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I have fallen in love with Japanese pottery and ceramics. mostly due to Linda. And then also, of course, going through class, just as Linda said, once you do it yourself, you learn how hard it is. And there's just something really special about Japanese pottery. And then I also think about the attachment we have after interviewing our teacher. I think just so much more about it. So when I saw her collection of pottery, I wanted to cry. It's so beautiful. And then she let me set the table, and I just had like the best time. She's like, "We need a bowl for limes," and I was like, "No problem. I already know which one I'm gonna pick." Yeah, it was just really special. And something I learned from her, which I think I mentioned in the video, was I had picked out a bowl that was like 100 years old. It had a dragon in it, and I think we put like limes or avocado in it. And she was like, "Oh, you have really great taste. This bowl is like 100 years old." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just put limes in this like beautiful piece of ceramic that is like so old." And then Linda and her were just saying to me like, "Oh no, 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 like when you have something like this, like you should use it.
Yes.
Like why would you even own anything like this if you don't use it? Like it's such a waste." And I was like, wow. So it's really like changed my perspective on things as well. Like if you're going to have something nice that you love and cherish, like why not eat a bowl of ice cream out of it? Like it's there to live a life, and it's not living a life on a shelf.
I love that. I had a neighbor, my best friend's mom, actually, who wouldn't let us ever sit on the furniture. It was all covered in plastic. And when I was watching your video, and I was thinking, wow, there are people who just use stuff, like even if it's valuable. And this is something we actually talked about the other day with Tea Ceremony and Paprika Girl, who knows a lot about Japanese housekeeping and aesthetic. She has a very similar dish like collection of beautiful dishes she's collected over the years, and she always, even when it's just her eating, she will serve herself on beautiful dishes. And I was like, what a great reminder to do that, not just save it, save it, save it. I love that idea.
Why save it for a special occasion?
Right.
Like today is a special occasion,
Yes.
and that's kind of what I learned that day. Like, I mean, aside from the bread, that was great, and like I bought more pottery, but that was like, there's just always a lesson to be learned. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, tell us about that bread making lesson, because that looked like so much fun.
That's you.
So I met Toshiko. I call her Sensei. Her name is Toshiko, but I've called her Sensei ever since I met her, and I've been going to her house to learn how to make bread. Really, I'm not ever doing it on my own, so I say that I'm learning, but I really just go so I can make bread with her and then enjoy it and chat and hang out. But I met her probably about 10 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago. And I've been making bread with her, and we now do trips together sometimes, and we go have lunch, and she's just so amazing and so talented and so nice. Yeah, so I introduced Caitlin, and we went over there and made some bread with her, and she always invites her friends whom she grew up with. And just watching their interactions and the way they are together, because they've known each other since junior high school, is a treat in itself. So yeah, I just completely enjoy spending time with her. And I wanted Caitlin to meet her, and I like to introduce her to my friends also, because she loves meeting people and she loves just talking and showing people things. So yeah.
And what kind of bread was it? Is it sourdough?
No, we didn't make sourdough. I forgot what it's called, but
It was good bread.
When I looked it up, it said French sourdough, but I don't know if that's just what it translates to, it wasn't
fluffy.
Sourdough. Yeah.
It almost reminded me of like shortcake
bread,
but not sweet.
Right.
Like it had that like moist, fluffy texture.
Yeah.
Like a cake.
But like kind of, you can
But
make it crunchy on the outside. I don't know. It was like everything. She used to have a bread baking school. So in Shimonoseki that she owned, and then she is now completely retired, but she'll, host some of these smaller classes in her home from time to time. So we always make something different, but her breads are they're so soft and fluffy and very delicious.
Because it looks like the sour bread from Oheso in Sera.
yes.
And
So,
he uses the same bowls. He makes the same shape. That's the most popular sourdough bread that he has. It looks gorgeous. Yeah.
From the
Very
look,
professional.
it tasted totally different than I thought it was going to. I was like, oh, it's like really soft and moist. It wasn't chewy like a
yeah,
sourdough like I thought
like
it would, because
dense.
it looked like it would be and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really cool experience too for
That's
me.
great.
Yeah.
How a really fun experience. And it's I think that kind of or tiredness, I wouldn't call it frustration, but I know you're learning Japanese, but to be surrounded by Japanese, I remember that experience so much when I first came to Japan and everybody would just talk around me, and I was probably taking in some of it, but it was like overwhelming. So like you said in the video, you just follow what people are doing and then you pick up things here and there. I think that's a great first introduction to language, right?
Yes. My listening skills are much stronger than my speaking skills. For the most part, I could like understand a good amount. But Linda, I feel like you like know when I'm really confused. She'll just look at me and be like, just tell me what happened. I don't know how you know, but she always knows when I'm kind of confused, but she also like really lets me fend for myself. And like Linda speaks Japanese, and I really value that in her friendship because she knows that I really want to learn and I take lessons, but because of my work, like we don't speak Japanese where I work. So it's really difficult to be put in those situations. So she's always taking me and like inviting me to these things so I can just like listen and learn as much as I can. So I'm really grateful for that.
I think
That's
it's the
awesome.
best way to learn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Always to really hear it all the
Yeah.
time.
She's like, did you get that? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And just let it wash over you. Like don't get stressed out that you don't understand it. Just being like, I don't know, you know. And then they'll say it again or somebody will help you or you just follow gestures or something, right?
And in my experience, a lot of people are like really, really patient. I don't know about everybody else's experiences, but it's very obvious that I'm like really trying. And they always like help correct me, or they'll say the sentence over again. Like if I say the sentence backwards, which happens often because I'm translating from English to Japanese
Yeah.
and the sentence structure is different. People always are happy to correct me or say a word again and just like a lot of patience. So it's fun.
I also, when I was first learning and I was bombarded by so much, even visually, you're bombarded by so much Japanese, right? I would just take a notepad around and whatever kanji I saw a lot, I kept writing it down. And then when I had a lesson, I would ask my teacher and then I try to learn that one. And then when I saw it again, I was like, okay, I know that.
Sounds like my life right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's exactly what I do. Or I'm like, I heard this word. What did that mean? How can I use it? And then I don't forget it. Yeah.
But I'm so impressed by you. I was watching your house tour and you're saying how you can't read the kanji on the microwave or the oven, but you're using it somehow. Like, good job.
It
Holy
just,
cow.
I guess like a combination of buttons were once when like we first moved in and it worked. So I was like, I just do that every time.
You
And
become
thankfully,
superstitious, right?
yeah, I mean, after that experience, there's been like a lot of people on YouTube like actually sending me translations because as probably a lot of people watching you, anybody that's gone overseas, like Google Translate isn't always accurate. Like it says like really weird stuff, and I'm like one of the buttons translates to kill Drake, and I'm like,
What?
don't
That's
know.
not good. No. Yeah. Let's talk about you guys in soba class. The soba project looks so fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I still have a lot of footage from that needs to be gone through. Yeah, soba class was really cool. That's a really hard.
That was hard.
That was much harder than I thought it would be.
Yes. Because you have to be so not exact, but the rolling, I could not get
The nickel hands.
the nickel hands. He was like cat hands, and I was not doing cat hands. I don't know what I was doing.
I don't even know what that really
I don't
means
even-
either. I was like, sure.
I struggled a lot in that class.
Yeah. But for anyone watching who doesn't know what soba is, it's a buckwheat noodle that you can serve hot or cold. So we basically went to a class where we learned how to make these buckwheat noodles
By hand.
by hand. So they're all cut by hand. Yeah, it was
It was
hard.
fun.
And he makes
Yeah.
it look so
Yes,
easy.
yes.
He's just like
Yeah,
cutting
he
the
would show us
noodles.
and he would just do it in like 2 seconds. And I'd sit there for like 10 minutes going, I don't know how to do the cat hands. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that that looked pretty hard. And then with a master like that who's been doing it for so many years, it's probably really hard for him to slow it down and to
yes.
show you how to do it as a first timer, right?
I think about that sometimes too. I'm like, I bet we're like really annoying because we're taking so long. Like, I just don't understand. Because cutting the noodles, like, you can cut the noodles a certain thickness
Mhm.
or width. And if they're not all cut the same or they're
Yeah.
off, like it can change, like they don't cook the same.
Right.
So it was like you have to be pretty precise. And it was overwhelming. I was ready to eat by the time that was over. It's like, this is why like you leave this to the masters.
Yes, yes.
Well, I have to switch a little bit from traditional Japanese soba to the fact that both of you guys are obsessed with the pizza vending machine.
Well, until I
mean,
went.
I mean, all your Instagram photos of lonely vending machines is lovely. I love those. But also vending machines. Japan is the land of vending machines, so of course you're going to find a pizza vending machine. I didn't think it was too bad, but very hit and miss. Sometimes burnt, sometimes raw. Did you find?
Yes, I think I read the article on your website about it too. And the pizza on your website was a little crispy.
Yes.
Black. So when I
Crispy
went,
black.
Yes, I was trying to be nice. I don't want to like defer anybody from going because.
But you don't feel bad because it's a machine making it, so it's not like you're insulting someone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Ours was like slightly undercooked, like the bottom wasn't like crispy. I mean, what I say to people is if you're in the area, it's definitely worth going to. And if you're like a really big foodie and you feel like you can't leave without going, then go. But Hiroshima has a lot of other things to offer.
Yeah.
You can always take the pizza home.
Yeah. And have it like late night in your hotel room.
Yeah, there you go.
But both of you guys are obsessed as well with 7-Eleven. So what I do, I was doing some tour guide workshops, and I would always take the Japanese tour guides who were trying to become English tour guides for people visiting Hiroshima from other countries. Definitely have to point out that pizza vending machine because it's kind of an interesting part of that area of Hiroshima, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everybody's going to go to the convenience store anyway. And convenience stores are really fun and cool. But if you have something unique, yeah, you got to point it out. It's fun.
Yes.
Yes. 7-Eleven always has delicious desserts.
So, yeah. And
every 2 weeks.
7-Eleven, I mean, compare convenience stores Japan to America. You're both from America, right? I mean, me too. It's when I go back to America, I'm so disappointed by convenience stores.
Me too.
Yeah. I think it'd be easier to contrast them. I mean, yeah, there's nothing to compare other than the brand name. I don't know. I never would go into convenience stores to like get lunch back home. No. And I don't want to say that in a way because I know a lot of people like that is what they do or can afford, but the quality is just so different. And something people always ask me is they're like, what's the shelf life on that food? Because it seems like there's always food stocked on the shelves. Like when I share it on Instagram or in my posts, like it seems to be wasteful. I was like, oh, no. This is the third time the shelves have been stocked today. They'll be gone again in the morning. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my American United States viewers always seem kind of confused about the concept because it looks like there's always food. But I also know what times to go before it's sold out between like lunch or dinner. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you definitely notice a big difference. If you eat 7-Eleven too much, you start feeling really unhealthy, right? It's just, but a lot of people do depend on it. And a lot of rural areas, they don't have a shop anymore and they have a convenience store. So they are serving a function. But in terms of plastic cleanup,
Yes.
I am so glad that they banned the free plastic bag, because every time we did cleanup, we would find at least 10, if not more, from only 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I made a point of going to the nearest 7-Eleven and telling them. But the poor Arbaito people, the poor staff, they don't know and they don't care, right? Yeah.
But I like they are trying to bring in, like, their rice ball wrappers now are combustible.
Yes.
They're not plastics anymore. They're trying to find
Bio
ways.
ink
Mhm.
or vegan ink or
Something like
something
that. Yeah.
that's
So,
like it has as much chemicals, and then the
Mhm.
plastic's getting thinner.
yes.
And I know they changed it to, it's like a bioplastic,
Mhm.
but when I was researching that, it doesn't actually like necessarily mean anything. It doesn't mean that it's actually like better plastic, but it is thinner.
Mhm.
And
as long as it doesn't last in the waterways then it's better, right? As long as it breaks down, or if sea creatures eat it and they don't die, that's better, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like McDonald's. If McDonald's, when they were selling apple slices,
Mhm.
that became the biggest demand for apples in the world. I mean, when big companies make small changes, it makes a big change, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
and
major.
it sets a good example for other
Mhm.
businesses
Yeah.
and people as well, because people are now in the habit of either taking bags or refusing them. Because I would see people ask or just like accept a bag,
Mhm.
even if they were just getting one thing, because it's a habit and it's just like it just is.
Yeah.
Where I moved from California, and a lot of like you don't like really do that there. You just don't take a bag from the store. You just carry it out with you.
Yeah.
If you can. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your trip to Miyajima. You introduced this shoyu shop, so very different from convenience stores, and I love this shop as well. It's on the main shopping street, and all the shoyu pack bottles are beautifully labeled and everything. I love that from your Instagram. It's gorgeous.
That was from mine or Linda's. I think we both
That's
talked about it though.
Yeah.
that's from yours, but I think you both mention it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's literally called the Soy Sauce Shop. So if anybody's watching and ends up in Miyajima, they have 2 different locations on the island. It's the best soy sauce I've ever had. Not that I may have a lot to compare it to, but it's wonderful. The packaging is beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah, they do like spices and different flavors of soy sauce shoyu. Yep.
That's great. And Linda, I noticed you're introducing the flea markets recently, which is another great place. Can you introduce is it Iwakuni's flea market?
No, so one of them is the Hikari Flea Market, which is probably about an hour from Iwakuni. But they have a flea market on the 4th Sunday of every month. And theirs has been going on, but the Yamaguchi Flea Market, which will start back up next month on the 1st Sunday, has been canceled for the last 5 months, I think. They've been out for a while. And so this will be their first one since COVID. So I'm super excited that they're finally bringing it back, and that's going to happen actually this coming Sunday. So
That's great.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think I mean, a lot of events were canceled, of course, and then I think outdoor events are definitely the next stage, right? The safer version, to have things outside. Like even the carp baseball games they've been doing again. At least it's outside, right? You know.
Yes. Yeah. And
I
they've been doing a good job of spacing people out, I think, too. They're only selling 50% of the stadium, and um but it is it's nice to be able to kind of get back to, it's not normal, but it's
like
getting there, just
it's
being
like the
able
new,
to.
and I hate this, but I don't even know what else to call it, but like the new normal.
Right.
Because at some point, like life's going to we're gonna have to figure out a way, because businesses are suffering.
Yes.
So if there's a way to do it safely, then I don't know.
Yeah, we have to find a way forward. The vaccine's probably not going to come too soon, and we need to support businesses, and also, we need mentally to get out and be around other people. I think it's a lot of depression now. Yeah, both of you guys are in Iwakuni, so Linda and you both often put beautiful pictures of Kintai, of course, Kintai-kyo.
My favorite
And
place.
yeah, and gorgeous. And then recently on Miyajima, was it? You saw a shrine where they showed how they built the underside of Kintai. I'd never seen that before. Daiganji Temple.
Oh, yes. Um, so that's the one that's behind, if you go through Itsukushima Shrine and you come out the backside, they have a model, which I never knew before, and I'd been to that shrine many times, but I didn't know they had a model of the Kintai Bridge. And when the Kintai Bridge was completely washed away, many, many decades ago, I can't remember how long ago that was, um, the people who rebuilt the bridge actually went to Miyajima to look at that model to figure out how to rebuild the bridge to make it look the original way, which I thought was so fascinating.
That is cool.
And I had no idea that that model was even there until somebody told me, and I went and looked, and sure enough, it was up there.
Yeah, very interesting. I didn't know that either. And how many times have I been to that temple? How many times to Kintai, right? Yeah, always can discover new things. I love it. And I love all of your in the modern home. I'm going to go back to your modern home video. I love that. I love the underground. I used to have the same cooling storage under my floor. And
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And I don't have that anymore. I'm thinking I should get one put in again. Such a
It's
great idea.
great. I mean, I think it's super cool. I think it's just a great way to utilize space, and that's the only way I can think of why it's there is just to have more space in the home, and I just think it's smart.
Yeah. So also you have a collection of wires. You were talking about power lines.
Oh,
And
me?
yeah,
Yeah.
power lines in Japan.
And yeah, so I thought this too, and I was like, wow, there's like lots of power lines, and it's kind of like become a part of Japan's identity and like big cities. And so anyway, I was just really curious about why there's so many power lines. And that's also just the kind of person I am. If I see something, I'm like, well, why is it like that? And in my experience, a lot of things Japan normally has a valid reason for things. And the power lines are above ground specifically due to weather and natural disasters. If they were to be put underground and there was like a flood or an earthquake and there was a lot of damage, they'd be much more difficult to fix. So there's also been a politically debates in some areas of Japan. Some people want them taken down and removed because the weather doesn't really affect their power lines where they are because maybe they're more central. But then a lot of people want to keep them because it's very like old timey and it just like feels like Japan. So it actually took me down a rabbit hole and I was like, wow, who would have guessed?
But it's interesting. This often comes up with destinations, right? If destinations are trying to attract tourists, not just from abroad, but domestically, they always talk about, oh, foreign people don't like the power lines, you know? But then when I visit the UK or when I visit Hawaii, even in the States, there's always road construction. And quite a lot of time that's to get to the wires. So maybe above land power lines isn't such a bad thing. I don't know. I'm always going back and forth.
Yeah. But now, like in the streets of Osaka or Hiroshima, like the small alleys when there's all these power lines, like I do, again, because I think I know more about it, I find more appreciation for it. And then because you realize, like, it makes you realize how old the cities are too, because they can't just take all of this down and like rewire the city. Like, that would cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I look at them, it's just like, I think about that too. And I think it's interesting. And I like the way that they look personally.
Well,
Yes.
I think you get used to it, and then like I'm going to do a trip to Kyoto soon, and I know there's some areas where they have put them underground because they want to keep the traditional aesthetic, and it definitely makes sense if you can afford it, if you can budget for that, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You also did a beautiful trip out to the rice fields before they were harvested. You were so lucky to catch that, right?
It was a very last minute trip, and we didn't even know that it was like harvesting season. My friends were just like, we want to go to the rice fields. And I was like, okay. And then we got there, and like half of them were being harvested. And then we did our research, and it's like, yeah, this is happening like right now. That was a great experience. What is the rice field called again? That area? Do you
Is
remember?
it Ini no Tanada?
I think
I think.
so. It's near Hiroshima, and
Where it
it's
has the beautiful terraces.
yeah, all the
Terrace.
terraces. I know that the cafe there is called Eeny Meeny
Mini
Miny
Miny Mo.
Mo.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you can't remember the name of the rice fields, just look that up.
And it's
Um,
it's
but
not
oh,
far it's not far from the expressway turnoff, right?
I
So
don't
it's
know.
not too much of a drive once you get off the expressway. So yeah, I really like that place.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
want to go back maybe in the spring when there's water. But
Hmm.
I didn't realize that that actual area, they really like having visitors, and they've kind of catered it to have and host visitors. They have a parking lot that's free. All the farmers were like really, really nice and kind of shocked to see us. But then they also host different events through the different seasons. So you can kind of experience the rice fields during its different stages. So when there's water, they do like a light show or like a reflection thing off of the patties, which I was just like, wow, I would have never
Hmm.
thought that. So they kind of cater to keep interests.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And I noticed both of you guys were reviewing a snake temple.
Mm.
Oh, the White Snake Temple in Iwakuni.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
it looks
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
it's newer. Yeah,
They've remodeled, and so it is pretty new now.
I
Um,
say newer compared to like other temples.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
it's fairly newer.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. And they have a white snake like habitat there too, so you can go look at the white snakes.
And
After
And Linda, I think it was you had the temple book, was it? That
Yes.
had the beautiful kanji written in it, and it's all the snake. Was it snake kanji? I was trying to work it out.
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
there's some snakes in the stamp I think that they put on there, but their stamp is really cool. And they also have books there, and the book has like a white snake on the cover.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
What
the
some
is
white
white
birds.
snake is really special to Iwakuni.
Hmm.
You would know more about that than I would, but our pottery sensei has a really beautiful white glaze, and I always thought it looked like a brain in a good way.
Because
Like
it's
I really,
bumpy.
it's very bumpy and very, very interesting, but it's called the white snake glaze to kind of honor the
Hmm.
white snakes that are here in Iwakuni.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
Hmm.
wow, that is cool. Well, we have a few more minutes. Can you guys talk about what projects you have upcoming? Or I know some of the projects like the Lotus Root or the pottery, it hasn't gotten onto the channel yet. So these things are coming up and it'll be on your channel. Is that right, Caitlin?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So when we kind of first started it, the editing is actually a lot more challenging than I thought it would be because I look back at the footage and there's sometimes like language barriers, but it's a challenge for me. And then now that we actually have a lot more things lined up, I
Hmm.
kind of want to wait until we have a few videos to like release them almost as a true series so people know when to expect and can experience them. But Linda's been able to make some really great connections coming up. Hopefully, if you want to
Yeah.
share, because you're better.
Yeah. So I met another, I didn't meet the actual potter, but I met his wife. And so I asked her if they would be willing to let us come and film the husband making their pottery. And their pottery is also very, very special, and there's a great story behind it. Um, so hopefully that will happen in the near future where we can go and film and interview him and her. And I also met somebody who owns a vinegar factory, which I think would be really, really cool. I have no idea how vinegar is made. And so I would be interested in going and learning about vinegar and watching them make it. I think would be super interesting. And it's a family-owned business. It's been passed down for generations, which I think is also very, very interesting. So I'm really excited to hear their stories and learn about how they got into the business that they're in or the craft that they're doing. So
Yeah. And we ultimately hope that with our videos that it interests people in what I think we talked about this when we first introduced ourselves on this, but like really getting people interested in the real culture, because like for me, I do have a social media platform, and I think people come because I talk about Japan and they're interested in like my perspective of things, but I really want to utilize that platform to highlight people that are really who like live here, because my experience is just so biased and jaded. I want my audience to hear from like the real Japanese people, the real craftsmen, the real like what life is really like, because I'm here eating at 7-Eleven and having a good time, but people need to hear these stories. They need to know how precious the culture is, and that some of these crafts are they're aging, and it's actually really special because what if these crafts aren't here in 50 years? These videos are going to be like history to some, and it's going to be cherished. And I don't know, I hope that people really enjoy them.
Absolutely, and so important in terms of not only tourism and creating appeal for Japan for visitors, but also for local residents. You know how I know there are places around the world where they only have 7-Elevens, or they only have the same kind of supermarket everywhere. You know, and then you have that generic feeling about where you're from. But I think there's so many special, unique things about so many areas of Japan, and you guys are covering it so beautifully because Linda has been here so long, speaks the language, has a deep understanding, but you are looking at things, Caitlin, with fresh eyes and things that she kind of doesn't see anymore, you know? So
Yep.
it's a wonderful collaboration.
Yeah, it is exciting because I learned the deeper meaning of things, and then she's like, I don't see it sparkly and shiny like that anymore. So yeah,
yeah, it is nice to see it from somebody who hasn't lived here their entire life.
You're like, oh, I guess that is interesting.
Yeah. There have been many times where she's said something and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about it like that, you know. And growing up here too, I think is a little different because I grew up more, I think more Japanese than American. So I look at things, I think, differently too. And so it's really, really cool for me to hang out with somebody or work on a project with Caitlin and just see things from her perspective, and makes me think about it in a way that I never thought about it before, you know, which I think is really fantastic.
It's so fun. I love it.
Yes.
And you guys are both presenting kind of similar ideas and things about artisans, about crafts, about local history and local knowledge. Of course, not Tokyo, very important.
I'm missing out on. Is this like a big thing?
Well, no, I mean when I first started this series, it's like everybody who wanted to talk or who was doing anything interesting was in Tokyo. And so it's so wonderful to be doing a series that represents from so many areas not in Tokyo. Like Tokyo is wonderful, but it's too much just Tokyo.
And like to really experience Japan, like you have to get out of Tokyo. And here's the thing, you can't come to Japan and not go to Tokyo. But if you really want to like, and I don't know, my biggest thing is like when I travel, and I've talked about this with friends before, like I want to feel something. I don't just want to see something. So when I came to Japan for vacation, my husband and I did like a matcha tea ceremony, and we did these things, and like those were the highlights of my trips. Because sometimes you see something, you know, you can read the blog post, you can look up the geotag on Instagram for all of these like amazing shrines and locations to take photos, but like you go and you look at it and you walk away, and what do you have? A photo to show for it. But when you like get out and you meet people and you like go on a farm and you go to tea ceremonies and you like talk to people, that's when like your perception of things change. And then you also realize like people are really the same all over the world. We just communicate differently, you know? So it brings you closer to humanity as well.
Definitely. And I meet people who are visiting all the time who've been in Japan for a month, even sometimes. And when I talk to them and I say, so has there been any issues? You know, have you had any trouble? And so many people say it's really lonely traveling in Japan. They have no chance to connect with local people. So what you guys are doing and how Linda is helping you connect with real people making crafts or just normal people getting together and making bread, you know, like these experiences are so wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing them with everybody. Yeah, fantastic.
Little travel tip, Airbnb experiences is a really great way for anybody watching to have experiences like that. Like that's what we used when before we moved here. We were on vacation. We did like kimono and matcha tea ceremony. So there are ways you'll be able to get experiences like ours. And I really hope that the video might inspire other small businesses to get on platforms like that or offer experiences for travelers, because I think it'll be, once Japan does open back up, it'll be a great way to boost their small businesses as well.
And even before it opens up, because now Airbnb experiences, there's a lot of online classes. So you can study Mexican cooking with a Mexican chef in Mexico from anywhere in the world, you know?
Yeah.
So it is, I think we're seeing a very positive transition to kind of open up an audience to anywhere and anyone. And in terms of good things about COVID, that's been very positive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually kind of how our project started, because we were like kind of felt like stuck in Iwakuni, and I was like, well, what can we do?
Yeah.
And they're like, let's go talk to people and film it. It'll give us something to do on the weekends. And now it's turning into a really cool thing.
Yeah. It's fantastic, and I'm a big fan of what little tidbits I've seen so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing lots more. So thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really fun. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks for your questions and comments. And if we can think of any links below about things we talked about, we'll try to add them a bit later. So have a good night, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.